The TV blared from the living room, a news anchor's voice cutting through the smell of burnt toast. Tragic loss of promising young criminology student Daniel Cole. His father, prominent businessman Richard Cole, spoke with us earlier today. I froze in the doorway. On the screen, my father's face filled the frame, eyes wet, voice breaking in perfect rhythm. "He was my pride," he said, placing a hand over his chest. "I can't believe he's gone." The camera cut to footage of flashing police lights and a crumpled sedan being towed away. My sedan. The bread in the toaster smoked until the alarm screeched. I didn't move. I was standing in the kitchen, alive, while the whole city believed I'd been killed. Behind me, footsteps. "Danny?" My stepmother's voice, tentative. She stopped when she saw the TV. Her eyes darted to me, then to the screen, then back again. Her lips moved, but she didn't say a word. I grabbed the remote and muted the broadcast. "What is this?" My voice came out low, almost calm. She shook her head, pressing her palm to her forehead. You weren't supposed to see that yet." The words didn't make sense. The toaster dinged again, a ridiculous, ordinary sound in a room that had stopped breathing. Through the blinds, I caught a flash of headlights, the same black SUV I'd noticed 3 nights in a row, parked across the street, engine off, windows tinted, waiting. "Who's in that car?" I asked. Her mouth opened, then closed. Her fingers trembled as she reached for her phone like she was about to make a call she'd been dreading. Before she could speak, my own phone buzzed. Unknown number. A text. "Get out of the house. Don't trust him." Him. I looked back at the frozen image of my father on the TV screen, his hand pressed over his heart. My pulse pounded in my ears. I started to think about when it all began. The black SUV didn't move. Not when I walked past the window, not when I pulled the blinds shut. It was watching. My stepmother lingered by the counter, gripping her phone like a lifeline. She didn't make the call. She didn't explain. She just stared at me as if she was measuring how much I already knew. I sat on the couch, keeping my eyes on the muted TV. They were still showing my accident. Grainy footage of paramedics wheeling out a stretcher with a covered body. The camera zoomed just far enough to make the shape look like me. "Whose body is that?" I asked. She flinched. "Don't ask questions you don't want the answers to." That line, I'd heard it before. Not from her, from my father. I thought of the way he'd said it last month, after I came home early from class and found him in the garage with 3 strangers unloading heavy crates. The kind of crates you only saw in movies about cartels. He'd smiled, patted my shoulder and said, "Don't ask questions you don't want the answers to." Then he locked the door. Back then, I laughed it off. Dad was a businessman, a big one. Big deals, big secrets. He liked his privacy. I told myself it was nothing. But lately, the nothing had been piling up. 2 weeks ago at dinner, his phone buzzed and he stepped away to take the call. I heard him say, "We'll move the shipment before the Coast Guard gets the tip-off." When I asked about it, he claimed it was about yacht parts for a client. Last weekend, I noticed my passport was missing from my desk drawer. Dad returned it the next day, saying he'd kept it safe for me. And now here I was, watching my own fake death play out on live television. My phone buzzed again. Same number. He's going to make it real. Leave now. I looked at my stepmother. She was pale, almost translucent. "Do you know who's texting me?" I asked. Her lips parted, but before she could answer, a shadow crossed the living room. Someone was at the front door, a slow, deliberate knock. She froze. "Don't answer it." We stayed silent. The knocking stopped. A moment later, the sound of a car door slamming outside. The SUV's engine roared to life. I peeked through the blinds. The SUV pulled away, but another car, silver, with out-of-state plates, rolled into its place. 2 men sat inside. They weren't looking at their phones. They were looking at me. My stepmother finally spoke. "Danny, you need to trust me right now. Stay away from your father. Stay away from anyone he sends." I wanted to believe her, but my head was a storm. She'd been living with him for years. If he was behind this, she'd have to know. Why warn me now? I told myself I'd watch, wait, gather proof. But my hands were already shaking as I stuffed my laptop and phone charger into my backpack. From the kitchen, she said quietly, "If you're smart, you won't go back to campus tonight. They'll expect that." That hit me harder than it should have. She wasn't talking like a stepmother trying to calm me down. She was talking like someone who knew the playbook. I stepped outside anyway. The air smelled like rain. The silver car's windows followed me as I walked down the street. I didn't look back. Halfway to the corner, I caught sight of my reflection in a darkened store window. My face looked the same as always, but something was different in the eyes. I thought I knew who my father was. Now I wasn't sure I knew anything at all. Rain started to fall, sharp and cold, by the time I reached the gas station 2 blocks from the house. I ducked under the awning, pretending to check my phone while scanning the street. The silver car had turned the corner behind me, but hadn't followed all the way. The unknown number texted again. "You're not safe in public. Find cover. We'll talk." "We?" I typed back, "Who are you?" No response. I kept walking, doubling back through side streets until I reached the student co-op where my friend Marcus worked the night shift. He opened the door before I could knock. "Man, you look like hell," he said, pulling me inside. I didn't bother with pleasantries. I just watched my dad tell the world I'm dead. Marcus's jaw tightened. "What?" I told him everything, the fake accident, the texts, the SUVs, my stepmother's warning. I left out nothing. By the end, his hands were gripping the edge of the counter so tightly, his knuckles were white. "You think he's involved in something?" Marcus asked. I almost laughed. "I think he's trying to erase me." We sat in the cramped back office, the hum of the vending machine filling the silence. That's when I started piecing things together, not the whole picture, but enough to feel the shape of it. Dad had been using my name a lot lately. He'd sent me to sign for deliveries when he couldn't make it. He'd asked for my student ID to test the security at his office. He'd even joked about putting my name on one of his companies to give me a head start. What if it wasn't a joke? What if I was already legally tied to something I didn't understand, something dangerous enough that killing me would solve his problems? I pulled out my phone and searched my own name. The third result wasn't my social media. It was a business registry for a company I'd never heard of. Listed owner, Daniel Cole, incorporated 6 months ago. Marcus leaned over my shoulder. "Man, that's not good." The office door creaked open, and a tall woman in a raincoat stepped inside without knocking. She closed the door behind her. "You're harder to find than I thought," she said. Her voice was low, calm, but there was a badge in her hand. "Daniel Cole?" she asked. I nodded slowly. She showed the badge properly this time. "Special Agent Avery, FBI, we need to talk." Marcus stiffened. I said, "About my father." Her eyes didn't flicker. "About your father, and about you." She explained in clipped sentences, no extra words. "My father was under investigation as the head of an international arms trafficking network. For at least a year, he'd been using my identity for logistics and shell companies to make transactions harder to trace. The fake death, a cover to close off the trail before the Bureau could link the deals back to him. We have evidence he's arranging for your actual death within the next 72 hours, she said. The words didn't fully land until Marcus swore under his breath. You'll be taken into protective custody, she continued, but you can help us. We need inside information, names, places, codes, anything you've seen or heard in the last 6 months. Something in me snapped then. This wasn't about running anymore. I could feel the weight of my father's voice in my head. Don't ask questions you don't want the answers to. I wanted the answers now. I leaned forward. If I help you, I want one thing. Her eyes narrowed. What? I want to be there when he's arrested. She studied me for a long moment before nodding once. We'll see what we can do. We left through the co-op's back exit. Rain slicked the asphalt, and the silver car was gone, replaced by a nondescript van with government plates. 2 agents were inside, faces unreadable. As we drove, I kept replaying moments in my head. The crates in the garage, the missing passport, the phone calls about shipments. Each one was no longer a loose thread. They were knots in a noose I'd almost stepped into willingly. Somewhere between the wet streets and the Bureau's safe house, I realized I wasn't just a son anymore. I was a witness. And maybe maybe a weapon. The safe house was a narrow brick townhouse on the edge of the city, the kind of place you could walk past 100 times and never remember. Inside, everything smelled faintly of bleach and burnt coffee. They put me in a back bedroom with one barred window, no phone, no internet, just a cot, a desk, and a stack of bottled water. Agent Avery gave me a burner phone. Only incoming calls from me, don't answer anyone else. I nodded, but my mind wasn't in that room. It was with my father, wondering what he was thinking right now, whether he was already working on a new story for the press, whether he was angry, or whether he was laughing. The first night I barely slept. Every sound in the hall made me think someone had found me. Every creak of the floorboards felt like a countdown. By morning, Avery called me into the kitchen. 2 agents were waiting, one I'd met in the van, and another heavy-set with a scar along his jaw. They spread photos across the table, crates, ledgers, documents with my name signed in careful blue ink. "You recognize any of these?" the scarred agent asked. I pointed to one set of numbers on a manifest. "I saw these before, on a sticky note in my dad's office. He told me it was a shipping estimate for yacht parts." The agents exchanged a look. Scarjaw said, "Those numbers are a weapons batch from Ukraine." It felt like someone had punched me low in the stomach. For the next hour, they asked me to recall every unusual interaction with my father in the past year. I told them about the night with the crates, the call about the Coast Guard, the missing passport. Every detail they wrote down seemed to tie another knot around him. But the more I gave them, the heavier something inside me felt. Because with every fact, I was pulling my father further into the grave the Bureau was digging, and I couldn't stop picturing his face at the dinner table, smiling like he was proud of me. That night, I dreamt of him sitting across from me, pouring wine. "You think you're different from me?" he asked. His voice was calm, but his hands were dripping red. I woke with my chest tight and my hands shaking. 2 days later, they let me watch a live feed from one of their surveillance teams. The camera showed my father leaving his office building. He was talking on the phone, smiling like the world was his. Avery stood beside me. "We've got enough to bring him in. But there's a risk. If he feels cornered, he'll use it." "Use what?" I asked. She hesitated. "We have reason to believe he has leverage, people inside law enforcement, maybe even federal." The floor seemed to tilt under me. "So even if you arrest him—" "He could walk," she finished. The next morning, news broke that one of the Bureau's informants had been found dead in a warehouse fire. Avery didn't say it, but I knew it was a message. That was the first time I felt it. Real panic. Not fear of dying, but fear that none of this would matter. That he'd win anyway. That night, alone in my room, I stared at the burner phone. My reflection stared back in the black screen, pale and hollow-eyed. For the first time since this started, I thought, maybe I can't beat him. The next morning, I didn't wait for Avery to call me into the kitchen. I went there myself. The agents were hunched over a laptop, whispering in low, clipped tones. They stopped when I walked in. I didn't sit down. "If you're right, if he's got people inside law enforcement, then every move you make is compromised." Scarjaw closed the laptop. "That's our problem, not yours." "No," I said, surprising myself with how sharp it came out. "If you lose him, I'm dead. That makes it my problem." Avery studied me for a moment. "What are you suggesting?" I didn't have a plan yet, just an idea burning through me. "You've been building this like a normal case, step by step, paper trail. But if he's insulated, the paper trail doesn't matter. We need something that even his friends can't bury." Scarjaw frowned. "Such as?" "A confession, or something close enough." It sounded insane even as I said it, but once the words were out, I knew it was the only way. Avery shook her head. "Getting close to him isn't an option. You're a target." "Which is why he won't expect me to show up," I countered. "If I can make him think I'm scared enough to run back to him, he'll let his guard down." Silence stretched in the kitchen, rain tapped against the window like it was waiting for their answer. Finally, Avery spoke. "If we even consider this, it's not about you improvising. We control every step. We monitor, we record, and we pull you out if it goes wrong." I nodded, but inside I was already making my own list of rules. Rules that didn't involve pulling out early. That afternoon, while they were setting up surveillance, I slipped back into my room and opened the bottom drawer of the desk. My backpack was still there from the night Marcus helped me hide. Inside, wrapped in a sweatshirt, was my old digital recorder, the one I used in criminology class for interviews. It wasn't bureau tech. It wasn't traceable to them. Which meant if anything went wrong, it wouldn't vanish in an evidence room by mistake. That night, Avery brought in a new player, a former arms broker turned federal witness named Jonah. He was rough around the edges, all tattoos and cigarette smell, but he knew the network better than anyone. "Your old man's careful," Jonah said, leaning back in his chair. "He doesn't talk unless he thinks you're already on his side, so you've got to convince him you are." "How?" I asked. Jonah grinned without humor. "By offering him something only a son can offer, loyalty over truth." I didn't sleep much that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my father's face from that fake interview, the way his eyes glistened on cue. By morning, the bureau had a cover story ready. I'd escaped protective custody, stolen a car, and was headed to him for help. They'd leak it to one of the local channels they knew he monitored. When Avery handed me the keys to an unmarked sedan, she held my gaze a second too long. "If you feel like he's getting ahead of you, say the word. We'll come in." I didn't answer. As I drove toward the part of town where my father's private office was, the city felt different. Every traffic light looked like a signal. Every pedestrian looked like a lookout. When I finally parked across from his building, I sat there for a full minute, my hand resting on the recorder in my jacket pocket. The rain had stopped, but the streets still shone like they'd been polished. This wasn't about surviving anymore. It was about making sure he couldn't. The street outside my father's office was too quiet. Midday, but no foot traffic, no cars parked along the curb except for the black Lincoln I recognized from his garage. I stepped out of the sedan and crossed the pavement, my shoes loud against the wet concrete. Every instinct told me to look over my shoulder, but I didn't. He'd smell fear if I brought it in with me. Inside, the lobby was dim, all marble floors and glass walls. A single receptionist sat behind the desk. She didn't ask my name, just picked up the phone and murmured, "He's here." The elevator ride felt endless. My reflection in the mirrored walls stared back at me, same face but harder somehow. I didn't remember the last time I looked that way. The doors opened to his private floor. He was waiting at the far end of the hall, hands in his pockets, smiling like we'd bumped into each other at the grocery store. "Danny," he said warmly, walking toward me, "I thought I'd lost you." I forced a shaky breath, letting him think it was from nerves. I didn't know where else to go. His smile widened. "Of course you didn't." We went into his office, floor-to-ceiling windows, polished wood desk, the faint smell of cigar smoke. He closed the door himself, slow and deliberate. "I saw the news," I said, keeping my voice low. "Why tell them I was dead?" He leaned back against the desk, watching me like a chess player sizing up the board. "Sometimes, to protect someone, you have to make the world think they're gone." I let that hang in the air, my hand inside my jacket, pressing the recorder button without looking. "And the guys in the cars outside our house?" I asked. He shrugged. "You've got an older son, old enough to see the world as it is, which means old enough to have enemies. Some of mine might think hurting you would hurt me. Would it?" His eyes narrowed for the first time, just a flicker, but I caught it. "Everything I've done," he said slowly, "has been for this family, for you. But if you can't see that, maybe you don't belong in it." There it was, the shift. I pushed gently. "What exactly have you done?" He smiled again, but now it was thin, cold. "I've built something, a network, a market for people who understand that laws are just obstacles for the weak. And I've used your name because you're clean, untouchable, until you decided to run." The recorder in my pocket felt like it was burning through the fabric. I made my voice crack, just enough. "If I came back, could I still be part of it?" His gaze softened, almost paternal. "Of course, but there's one condition." "What?" "You disappear for real this time. We send you somewhere quiet until things cool down. New passport, new life. The boy named Daniel Cole will stay dead." Every muscle in my body tensed. He was inviting me into my own grave. I nodded slowly, as if considering, when? Tonight. I stood, pretending to straighten my jacket. I need to get my things. He didn't stop me, just smiled again, a king confident his pawn was moving into place. Back in the elevator, I kept my breathing steady until the doors closed. Then I slipped the recorder into my sock, just in case they searched me before I got out of the building. Outside, a nondescript sedan rolled up to the curb. Jonah was driving. Avery was in the passenger seat. "Did you get it?" she asked as soon as I climbed in. I tapped my ankle. Every word. For the first time in days, I felt like I'd just loaded a weapon. And this time, it wasn't his. ChatGPT Skazal, we didn't go back to the safe house. Avery said there wasn't time. Instead, Jonah drove us straight to a high-rise downtown. The bureau had rented out an entire floor, turning it into a command center. Screens covered the walls, agents moved in and out with coffee and files, and the air was thick with that quiet urgency you only feel before something explodes. Avery pulled me into a glass-walled conference room. Scarjaw was already there, headphones on, scrubbing through the audio from my recorder. He looked up when we came in. "This is gold," he said. "He admits using your name, talks about the network, even outlines the plan to move you off the board." I sat down, the chair cold under me. "So that's it? You move in, arrest him?" Scarjaw shook his head. "Not quite. The arrest is the easy part. Keeping him locked up when half his Rolodex has badges, that's the trick. We hit him in public, with enough witnesses and press to make burying it impossible." "How public?" I asked. Avery's eyes met mine. "Tonight, charity gala. He's the keynote speaker, live-streamed." It felt almost unreal, the idea of confronting him under chandeliers and champagne flutes. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized it was perfect. If he was cornered in front of the city's elite, his mask might crack. By evening, the plan was in motion. Jonah and I went in first, dressed in borrowed tuxedos. My heart thudded against my ribs as we stepped into the ballroom, all warm light, glittering glasses, the hum of expensive laughter. I spotted him near the stage, talking to a cluster of men in tailored suits. He didn't see me at first. Jonah murmured in my earpiece, 2 minutes till Avery gives the go. I moved toward the bar, keeping him in my peripheral vision. People brushed past me, waiters with silver trays, women in sequined gowns. The crowd was a living thing, shifting and breathing as one. Then his gaze landed on me. For a split second his smile faltered, then returned, wider, brighter, as if my presence was just another card he'd planned to play. He excused himself from the group and crossed the floor. "Danny," he said warmly, gripping my shoulder like we were the closest of friends. "You came." I kept my voice even. "Wouldn't miss it." He leaned in slightly. "We'll talk after my speech, then we'll get you out of here." The earpiece crackled, Avery's voice, "Now." I stepped back just as the big screens on either side of the stage flickered, my father's face appearing, not live, but recorded. His voice filled the room, clear and sharp. "I've used your name because you're clean, untouchable." The audio rolled on, every incriminating word. Gasps rippled through the crowd, heads turned toward him, the men in suits backed away. He froze, his eyes darting around the room, searching for the source. Then he saw Avery moving in from the left with 2 agents. Panic flashed across his face. He bolted toward the side exit. The crowd reacted like a tide, parting and surging at once. Some guests shouted, others recorded on their phones. Waiters dropped trays, champagne spilling across marble. Jonah and I moved to cut him off, but he was fast, faster than I remembered. He hit the door, shoved it open, and ran straight into 3 more agents. The sound of handcuffs snapping shut was drowned by the chatter of 100 voices. The click of cameras, the unmistakable hum of a story too big to disappear. I didn't wait for the applause or the questions. While the room swarmed around him, I slipped through the nearest exit and out into the cold night. The air tasted different. Lighter. For the first time, I was walking away on my own terms. ChatGPT Skazal, snow had started to fall by the time I reached the river. I stood on the pedestrian bridge, hands in my pockets, watching the black water slide beneath the lights. Across the city, sirens wailed faintly, distant, almost unreal. Somewhere in a federal transport van, my father was sitting in silence. Maybe he was replaying the gala, the faces turning toward him. Maybe he was planning his next move. But it didn't matter. I pulled the recorder from my pocket, the same one that had been in my sock hours earlier, and turned it over in my hand. The metal was warm from my body heat, but it felt heavier than it should have. A gust of wind rattled the bridge's railing, snowflakes clung to my sleeves, melted on my skin. Behind me, a couple walked past, laughing softly. Their voices faded into the night. I placed the recorder back in my jacket, zipped it shut, and leaned on the railing. Across the water, the city skyline glowed, sharp edges, cold steel, all lit from within. I didn't feel victory or loss, just stillness. The snow kept falling,